It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by EasyDNS.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Access of Easy podcast, where I forgot to turn my phone on vibrate before we started. My name is Joey.
Did it get buzzed as soon as you started?
It just got buzzed as soon as I turned the recording on.
We're not going to restart this episode, even though we're 2 seconds in, just to get that. All bloopers and everything that goes along with it, they stay in. There you go.
It's the director's cut. Director's cut. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm okay, Joey. I'm okay. I'm enjoying today. It's a very nice day. It might rain, though, unfortunately, in a little bit. But
yeah.
Playing golf tomorrow, so it's gonna be fun. Let's see if I get rained out again.
Dude, we planted grass in the backyard, which is like the most cheap thing you could ever do. I think grass seed is gotta be among the cheapest things to buy. And usually it takes a little while to grow grass if you get like a little bit of a drought. We planted it at just the right time. Honestly, Len, it looks like the grass has been there for years already. Very happy with the result. I should have planted more instead of just this one strip in my backyard that we did. But anyway.
You got to wait for somebody to do some construction nearby. And then once they have the rolls of sod just waiting to be, you just go ahead, drive by, and there you go. You got some fresh sod.
Hey, buddy, you got a couple extra rolls there?
$20? Especially when it's the municipality doing it. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, you paid
City
for it.
City Hamilton, right? I don't know if you know this, got busted. A few guys got busted for selling asphalt out of the back of a city truck maybe 10 years ago. And the union, they ended up winning and keeping their jobs, but yeah, they basically made, what was the case they made? That nowhere in the training did it say they couldn't sell the city's asphalt out of the truck. Incredible stuff.
There's truth to that. I don't think, right? Like you have to be explicitly told you should not, thou shalt not sell stolen sod. Stolen asphalt, sorry. Or sod.
Oh, God bless them. Anyway, Access of Easy is actually what we're here for, not to talk about ways to rip off the municipality. Last week's quote of the week: "It is not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." That was by W. Edwards Deming. Jerry got it. Congrats, Jerry. Never been a fan of the first initial instead of the first name, but anyway, story for another time. This week's quote
by Eddie.
Yeah, Dem, I guess Eddie Dem. ED. This week's quote: "The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men." I've heard of a different twist on that one. What was it? I forget. It is about staying away from politics means you'll be ruled by morons, basically, is the gist of the other quote. That's pretty close to what we're dealing with here too. Anyway, if you know it, no Googling, obviously no searching it up on online. Encarta encyclopedia only. And if you get it, you put it in the comments. You get your next domain or hosting renewal on EasyDNS. You can't beat that. Easy. Piece of cake. Doesn't take much. Len, we got how many stories today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 altogether. Where do you want to start?
Cybercrime, Canada.
What else is new?
With this report from the Auditor General, because she did an audit. The Auditor General did an audit. Imagine that. And it was found that the Canadian government agencies are not well coordinated to fight cybercrime. And this is obviously following the official report by the Auditor General, Karen Hogan. Mm-hmm. And this was done, well, in the past, we had something that was done by the Communication Security Establishment, CSE. And that's the Canadian equivalent to the US NSA. So last year, they figured out that organized cybercrime was set to pose a threat to the national security of Canada and economic prosperity over the next 2 years. Well, here we go. A report is kind of saying there's something going on. So apparently there's many breakdowns in communications between the agencies. And this results in many cybercrime incidents not being directed to the right place to be investigated. And it's thought that the RCMP, for instance, may be understaffed to handle the volume of cybercrime. And, this RCMP, they say they experienced delays in deploying an information technology system meant to make it easier for victims to report crimes and provide a shared cybercrime database for law enforcement agencies. According to Reuters, as of January of this year, 30% of positions across all RCMP cybercrime teams were vacant. So there's a staffing issue that needs to be resolved. And so this staffing problem is causing issues. Canada reports around a $531 million in financial losses due to cybercrimes in 2022 alone. 2023, I expect to be even higher. In 2024, should be even higher at that. The Auditor General recommends that the government establish a single point of reporting for cybercrime so incidents can be investigated properly. That makes sense. But Canada, she's saying, is not well prepared to fight the cybercrimes. And it's just because the uncoordinated, understaffed, and even deleting evidence in the past. This is causing a lot of problems. But it's not just something that Canada is dealing with. Let's be honest. This is probably every country out there that is dealing with this type of problem. It's a new way of cyber warfare, a new way of doing warfare. And it's just difficult to stay ahead. You have to deploy the resources. You have to have the money, the people power required to do the job. You like that, Joey? So you got to do that, and it's difficult in certain situations. And here we are. Canada is unfortunately the beneficiary, or the exact opposite of this, and they're getting owned because of these cyber crimes as a result. It's too bad, but what are they going to do? Let's see. Let's hopefully they set up this single point of reporting and work alongside the RCMP and make them properly staffed.
It'll never happen. How can you be properly staffed to keep up with the threats that are present in the wider sort of web world? What is the plan for that? We've talked about this so many times, how like the government's operating a cruise ship trying to, do the cone drill against the surfboard, and you just can't, you can't keep up. You're never going to keep up. This is why, like, I think overall what I'm worried about is when I read stories like this, what I see is, 7 months from now or 10 months from now or 12 months from now, I see like a parliamentary QP or something, or some piece of legislation coming down that is like a ban hammer on some kind of software production, some kind of software use, some kind of something that really should be able to be tackled, with a sort of a finer tooth comb, but isn't, because there's not a lot of coordination between government agencies or departments or whatever. And like you said, this is not unique to Canada. This is a Canadian story, but it's not unique to Canada. Every government is struggling with this. And I bet you, Len, that there's been a lot of compromised systems at the municipal, provincial, federal level, state, federal level in Canada, or in the United States, I should say, that haven't even been noticed. These guys are plucking data, plucking passwords, plucking information, and nothing is coming of it because they don't even know what's happening. Don't forget, those systems are like, I talked about this with Mark one time. They're all in something called technical deficit, right? Like the importance of those systems is so critical that they cannot ever really be taken offline for a full rehaul, or overhaul, I should say. And so they're just kind of built on each other over and over and over again with band-aids, which makes this task even more difficult. To coordinate between departments and do all this other stuff. So, I don't expect it to change. If anything, I expect it to accelerate, and for these problems to continue to get worse as the technology available to the attackers gets better. Right? That's my thinking. And the Auditor General, I'm curious, like, does the Auditor General have that responsibility in other departments? Like, what is the response? Where are the response deficiencies in certain? Be curious about that. Because one thing that caught me by surprise, like, why is the Auditor General looking at this? Surely this could be addressed somewhere else. But
well, the CSC was reporting last year that there's going to be some problems within the next 2 years due to cyber crimes, and that may have sparked this, but I don't know. It could have been a formal request by somebody higher up.
I don't know.
Who knows? But let's go to Bill C-63, and we talked about this before. Let's talk about it again. This is Canada's Online Harms Act. So the gist of this act, which was introduced in February 2024, it aims to make online spaces safer. And this targets social media platforms that have user-generated content, including live streams, stuff like YouTube and Facebook. But as of right now, private messaging apps are exempt. This may change, but at least for the time being, they are exempt. So all this does is going to be to try to reduce the spread of harmful content like hate speech, violence, threats, and child sexual abuse content. And they're trying to provide some accountability to make platforms more responsible for managing harmful content and to try to be more transparent about their methods. Also trying to give law enforcement some tools. It's going to create a digital safety commission to oversee the act and a digital safety ombudsperson to help users with complaints. And finally, it's going to provide protections, which will strengthen child pornography laws and offer special protections for children that are online. So the act right now, the bill, is in debate, and it's in a second reading from the last I checked. And the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was advocating for this bill. Obviously, his party was the one that presented it. And he's saying this would give government the tools it needs to protect its citizens. Now, the definition of social media service is still a bit vague. So there's some questions to do exactly what platforms are going to be exactly covered. I mentioned a little bit earlier that private messaging apps aren't, but things may change moving forward. But that's the gist of it. Digest it how you wish, figure it out, whatever you want. But this looks like it might end up becoming law based on what I see, unless an election is called before this gets royal assent, but probably not.
It'll get passed. We talked about this anyway, that it'll pass even if it has to kind of go backwards in the process. I think you said in an election, the bills that are on the table are pulled and then reintroduced. Is that how it goes in Canada?
Well, they're pulled, and whoever forms the next government can table whatever bills they want. So
this seems to have the support of the Conservatives, though.
As long as they get support of the NDP, that's sufficient.
So this is worrying. It's concerning to me. Like, it should be concerning to everybody, and I don't want to. It's easy to freak out and be emotional about this stuff, but there's two things in the interview that are worth mentioning here, and they're summarized on the Reclaim the Net page too. But the one thing is, there's not really any clear definitions of stuff like hate speech. Like, this has always been a problem. Someone somewhere thinks that something you say every day is hateful. And to me, you have to really be careful about where you draw those lines. We're not alone in this thinking. Many people, prominent thinkers, legal thinkers, Michael Geist comes to mind, have made the same case that hate speech is a difficult thing to define. And I think that the reason it's difficult to define is because you do have a freedom of speech, and everyone is cut, everyone's cloth is sort of cut from a different jib. I don't know if that's the right saying. I'm sort of blending terms there, but I may be more offended or find something more offensive or more hateful than you do, or than the next person, and they may find something less offensive or hateful than I do, or than the next person. And you're asking sort of on a sliding scale what sounds like a independent panel to decide whether or not someone has committed a hate speech crime. The bigger issue to me than the definitions is that this will become political. And it's not like the intention is for it to become political. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But everywhere you see hate speech enforced, Len, what are the undertones? They're always political. And, JT is talking in the interview about how having too much power will, lead to abuse. He's right. And that includes government, I think. And so I'm curious as to where this is going to come down in terms of its balance. Like I've said before, and I think I wrote this somewhere, maybe on Twitter, but I forget now, that the child porn thing is a great wedge issue to kind of weasel into everyone's online privacy and everyone's online life, speech, whatever. Here's a question for you. Given what we've seen with the news providers and what's being done as far as CanCon now with like some of these streaming services, what are the odds that a service like Twitter just says, yeah, I'm not policing this, we're not going to operate in Canada anymore?
Trying to think what are repercussions for doing that. I don't know. Let's go down this path, right? Let's decide they say, screw it, we're not going to honor this request, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So what happens at that point? Are they fined? Are they prevented from offering services in Canada? Like, what would be the next step?
My guess is that it's fines, but like ultimately
that.
Well, that's a problem, right? But you could certainly say, like, we're fining you. And, as big as Elon is, any first world government is bigger. And, we don't have the same benefits. Like, we don't live in a country where freedom of speech is truly protected, right? We don't actually have that right the same way the Americans do. So to me, it looks like this is an opportunity for some of these companies. Like, Twitter's a great example. Elon Musk hates the government. And, he's got a lot of reasons for that stance. Some are more valid than others in my view. But to me, we're a small country of low income earners. All our best people have gone to the States, continued to leave. I don't know what we're still doing here. Maybe we're not among the best people. Could that be the problem? I don't know. But anyway,
I'm bottom of the barrel.
It's like it's like it's clear that the default response now from companies like Meta and Google, it's not like there's no precedent for this. The default response is, okay, we're not going to operate there, or we're just going to drop that service that you want us to pay for or abide by this law regarding or whatever. I can imagine a world where that happens, honestly, and it would be a huge story. It would be a huge story, and in my opinion, one that this government doesn't need on the world stage. You know, the New York Times interview, I haven't watched it, but I want to. And you know, we kind of spoke today about some of the PR problems that the government is having at this point. This would just be a huge one. You know, it would be gigantic and it would be global. You know, one of the problems they're having is that the alleged wins are very much locally covered and not internationally known, but the blunders are basically news everywhere. This would be another example of that. I would advise against trying to pursue this any further, but I'm wrong in that regard. They're going to obviously continue.
Let's talk about a big blunder with 23andMe, and there was a data breach over
How many times are we going to talk about these guys are entering into the most frequent flyers on this show, aren't they?
And they're offering the right type of protection. We'll talk about that in a second. We basically know what it is. So for people who
hold on a minute, let me without even looking at the story, okay? Let me predict what happened here. There was a breach. Many people's information was stolen. It was sold on the dark web for some unknown price. 23andMe found out about the breach but didn't tell anybody until recently, and now they're giving you some kind of credit monitoring as a sympathy prize.
You're about 60% right. So we could go to the next story, which is, let's see, Microsoft. Let's talk about 23andMe. So yeah, that's the company that provides genetic testing and ancestry services. You provide them your DNA to do some testing, and well, they've been hacked. There was a data breach, and this, you know, this is launching some investigations by privacy watchdogs in both UK and Canada. Because millions of users' data potentially have been stolen as a result. The attackers were able to exploit a vulnerability in a feature called DNA relatives. And this allowed users to connect with relatives who have also taken a 23andMe test. And by compromising only 14,000 accounts, the attackers were able to scrape information from a much larger pool of users. And the nature of the data that was breached is not yet clear, but it can potentially include sensitive information such as a user's DNA sequence, ethnicity estimates, health predispositions. It's pretty damning stuff. And 23andMe has not yet disclosed exactly how many users have been affected by the breach. And this goes back to the security of this type of data, genetic data, and the potential for misuse that comes along with it. And genetic data is considered to be highly sensitive because it could reveal a lot of information about a particular individual, such as a person's health, risks, ancestry, and a whole bunch of other things. So in the wrong hands, this information can be used to really injure somebody or make it really difficult for them to do anything moving forward. But anyways, 23andMe says that they're cooperating with the investigations and taking the steps to improve the security of a platform. Love it. Here we go. So they have disabled the DNA relatives feature. So that's been disabled. That's good. Second thing, they're going to be offering free identity theft protection to all its users. So that's the standard stuff. Not sure how many years they're going to be offering that for. Maybe it's a standard 1 year, and good luck. So sad if your information is in the wrong hands. DNA information, Joey. DNA. How scary is that?
Crazy. Listen, I try to avoid most of my relatives, honestly. Like, why would you ever go on 23andMe to find more relatives that you'd have to worry about giving Christmas cards to? I'm having a hard time understanding this logic.
I could say the one group of people that probably would really want to see this, to use this, is if I were adopted, for instance.
That's the only group, though. Like, there's no other reason to do this, right?
Or
come on,
another one, like if I was,
you're trying to apply for a job and you need like 1/8 or something.
No,
get
like
through the queue. No, like what?
If one of the parents is not even in the situation, it's not in the equation, and you have no idea who that person is, and you want to learn a little bit more about your background, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see those two situations that may be applicable. Anything else, you're really giving up a heck of a lot of information, and you're trusting them to store it.
If you have one parent in your life, you know about the other parent. Like, the one parent is not like, oh, I don't know what happened. There's only, like, as far as I know, there's only been one virgin birth. That's alleged at this point. So like,
sometimes
I don't know.
there could be a one-night stand you never understood, you never met. Like there, there are some situations, right? I'm not going to just paint everybody with the same brush, but certainly the people that are adopted and don't know their parents for whatever reason, they can't get that information. I would imagine they're curious about this, and this is one way to scratch that itch.
I mean, it's fine if you want to scratch the itch, but like, Jesus, the price you pay is your genetic data.
Well, I'm not condoning the use of it. I'm just saying.
I know. It's just like the cost can only be so high, right? Like there's no like smaller bit of information they could get. Like, oh they got my address. Like, no, they got your DNA. Like that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I don't know. Yeah.
They're gonna clone you, right? Like they got your DNA. Is it possible that they could make?
I'll tell you, that whoever, if they do clone me, they'll find a really incredible athlete from about 20 to about 35, and then things will start to fall apart. So, well, it's 15 years though, pretty good.
Are you 35 yet?
I'm 37 this year. I'll be 37 this year. Yeah.
So things are falling apart at this.
I off the beaten path here. It takes me much longer to warm up and recover from a game than it did even 2 years ago.
You guys smoke the bud, man. That's going to get you going quicker.
I'm not going to start.
And I don't smoke it, so I'm just talking crap. Anyways, let's talk about Microsoft. And there was a critical remote code execution, an RC bug that was discovered, and it's affecting Microsoft servers. And this vulnerability resides in the Microsoft messaging queuing, the MSMQ. And that's a messaging service that enables applications to communicate across networks. So malicious actors can exploit this bug to gain complete control of vulnerable servers. And a recently released report emphasizes the urgency of patching this vulnerability due to the ease of the exploitation. It also highlights other high-priority bugs that should be addressed promptly. And even with all this known, the technical details of the vulnerability are not publicly disclosed to present a widespread exploitation. But as mentioned, Microsoft has released security updates to address the bug and any additional security measures to mitigate the risks associated with this vulnerability can include restricting access to MSMQ services. So if you are running this, run a patch.
What do I do? Help me on my Microsoft machines, Len. What do I do?
I don't think you're running it on yours. I would imagine that this is applying for people on a server side level. But yeah, like I say all the time, friends don't let friends run Microsoft. I'm trying very hard to get you into something more secure. I know. I'll keep trying. I have no problem.
Mark says the same thing. I told you I ended up having to like get a malware thing, like a suite for my home computers here because Mark freaked me out one time. Anyway,
is that specific to Microsoft, or is he recommended for other operating?
He recommended it for Microsoft. I think he just said it's good across all platforms, probably, but like obviously Microsoft is the sort of the most vulnerable. It's the widest use.
It's the biggest fish, right? In the pond. If Linux was had a much bigger market share, I would suspect malware would be attacking it at the same rate it is. So it's all reflective of the market
popularity
share. It's Linux. I mean, great operating system, but it's as insecure as just about anything else. If you make it insecure, you can make it much more secure, but if you don't, there's gonna be holes in it.
I don't have like a lot to add to this story because I don't run like server side hardware, but like what Microsoft, again, like much the same way governments are. I think Microsoft is getting to that point, right? Where because there's a story about Microsoft or Windows or some vulnerability with like home PCs almost every week on this show too. And they do push notes out and push patches and push updates, but always a bit too late, right? And I don't know enough about hardware and software development to know whether or not this is a symptom of just quicker release cycles or more frequent hardware drops or whatever. But people now probably, Len, are more worried about their security than they've ever been before. And they're still way behind the 8 ball, arguably falling further behind the 8 ball than ever before either. And so like, what is the alternative here? What's the solution to these sorts of problems? I don't know. Again, like I was saying, much like government, these guys are in the same boat. It is hard to run a shop the size of Microsoft and get this stuff fixed or have it ready to go on day one on release day without any of these vulnerabilities. But
But you can't just fault them. I mean, I'm looking at Linux vulnerabilities right now. May 30th, 2024. Another one mid-April, April 3rd,
For
March
sure.
26th.
For
So this is everything. These systems are complex, and to build them right from the very first time to be foolproof
can't be done. Can't be done.
Correct. It's just, there'll be a way that is found to attack it. You patch it, and you go from there.
Right.
So I'm not trying to defend Microsoft. I'm just trying to say that this is just a problem with all operating systems.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I just don't know, like, it feels like we could do, if we, like, in a year when we're doing this show, there's going to be so many more of these stories. It feels like I can't wait to see, because, like, don't forget, you basically still have like a somewhat large swath of the world where these computers, like, no one has like a home computer, right? Or home computers are much older or not worthwhile, going after, in terms of hacking, or like the fish is getting bigger, like you said earlier. And it's harder and harder to protect, there's not, there's never a full suit of body armor for something that size. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it just seems to me like you're fighting an uphill battle, right? You're just constantly fighting against the swarm, and the swarm is growing. There's not much you can do. You never want to, you could take every precaution in the book, but if you're the guy who winds up in the Axis of Easy story, if you're patient zero, you're
frick. So if you get hacked and your system gets attacked by breach somehow, I don't think you're going to have anything super sensitive on there, right? Like you would just basically reformat. No. Yeah. So that's the same with me. I mean, if it happens, I could reformat and be online almost the exact same place I was within a day. It will take me some time to do it, but within a day I'll be able to, because the most important thing to me right now would be my Bitcoin, and it's not stored anywhere here.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So good luck. So that's the thing. I encourage people just to not store information that is sensitive on their computer, and the most important stuff that's you believe to be most important, definitely not there. So
you shouldn't store any of that stuff online, right? Air gap, all
the
time. Yeah.
Store your fiat account on there, absolutely, but you're no, don't do that. Secure that as well. There's lots of value to fiat right now. All those melting by the day. Let's talk about AI Spera. Okay, Joey, we're gonna have to do some.
We gotta
There's a
know
few
more.
Here.
I know. Okay.
This AI, I you know what? Nothing spectacular. 1.5, maybe 1.75. I'm sorry. I'm stretching here.
I don't think it's that very good. I don't think it's very good either. I don't think it's that great. I think we could go 1 or 1.5.
Okay.
I want to know if is it an acronym?
I don't know.
Doesn't seem like it. Nowhere in the article is saying anything about this being an acronym. There's no clickable link to AI Spera. Let's see right now. We're going to find out on air here.
Well,
AI Spera. Oh, it just wants to do AI spreadsheets. Jeez. Anyway, okay, read the story. I'll find out.
No, AI Spera is collaborating on various algorithms. So, it looks like that's the name. It's
it's not an acronym. This is bad. That's a bad name. One.
Okay, so that they said they have introduced new fraud detection data product called Criminal IP. I like that name, Criminal IP. I'm going to give that 4 out of 5.
Why?
Criminal IP sounds wonderful because it's not just intellectual property, but it's also could be internet protocol. So Criminal IP, I love that. That's a cool name. That'd be an awesome name for Call of Duty or something.
You've been giving out 1s and 2s on the show for a year, and this is where you land with the 4.
See, I'm not always tough. Criminal IP, I like that name. So
I give it a 2.
So, anyways, Criminal IP is a product that is available on the Snowflake marketplace. That's a 5. That is a Snowflake marketplace. Giving that a 5.
I'm with you on that. That's good. I like that one.
So it's not what we think it is. I love that name. Anyways, so why would anyone want to get Criminal IP? Well, you should, because it leverages data from a multitude of sources to pinpoint malicious IP addresses. And this information can be used by organizations to stop fraud and cyber attacks. So Criminal IP works by gathering information from various sources, including the dark web intelligence, anti-fraud databases, and cybercrime feeds. Then the data is then analyzed to identify patterns and indicators of malicious activity. And so by using Criminal IP, organizations could gain valuable insight into potential threat and take steps to mitigate them. So some of the benefits: it can include proactive fraud detection because it could help organizations to identify and block fraudulent activity even before it occurs.
Mhm.
It could also improve security posture because organizations could improve and their overall security posture and reduce the risk of cyber attacks. Third thing, I think this is the most important thing for businesses that to look at, it could reduce costs because it could save money by preventing fraud and cyber attacks. I'm not sure how effective this is, but this is an interesting way to use quote unquote AI to make organizations safer moving forward. I am going to stay neutral in terms of how good or bad this is going to operate moving forward. I hope it works out well, but this could be a total flop. But everything remains to be seen at this particular moment.
Okay, so you and me have talked about AI a lot in the past, and that general sort of consensus between the two of us is that AI is basically just a nicer search UI, right?
Yeah, you could program it to do some parsing of data and stuff like that.
Sure.
On the go.
And so this is a good use for that,
Mhm.
right? It's basically crawling the web, scraping data, scraping from sources that you give it, and finding out ways to protect, XYZ service, system, whatever. This is a good use for that. And it notes at the bottom another interesting thing here, an important thing. It's available in much different languages. So you don't just have to use English language, forums, websites, whatever. You can go across the board. How many stories do we have that come from countries where English is not the primary language?
Fair bit.
Tons. Yeah. It's like probably 30%, I would say, 30-ish% or a quarter, let's say. Significant number. And as we know, a lot of the hacking, at least according to a lot of the stories we talk about, Russia, China, India, like these are places where people are committing these crimes and presumably posting about them somewhere, even under anonymous, pseudonyms. This is good. I like this. This is a good service. I'd be curious to hear what like Mark would have to say about something like this because he's obviously got his ear closer to the ground than we do. But as the data set grows, let's see if it's positively reinforcing or negatively reinforcing. One of the problems AI has is that it's negatively reinforcing because of the user base. This presumably would be different, right? It would be countervailing. You'd have more people celebrating the successes than celebrating things they didn't know anything about as if they were correct. I think this is a better use for it in my view. So I'm looking forward to seeing if anything comes to this and we end up talking about it again in the future.
So got a 4 to 5 on the name on my end, and
strong.
Like 4 to 5 from you in terms of the potential impact.
Yeah, I think it's good. This is a good use for AI. I believe.
And a good name.
Yeah, and a good name. Opinion. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
it. Snowflake Marketplace. I love that. That's awesome.
I like that too. I like that too. I look forward to the day when that domain is seized or whatever, and that guy's put in jail. But until then,
we'll scoop it up after. Once
it
goes back in the market,
can we get it? Easy DNS. You can register whatever domain you want. Anyway, that's it. We're done. Good show tonight, Len. As always, guys, gals, don't forget, sign up. Podcast, YouTube. Go to the easydns.com. Access of Easy tab or accessofelasy.com, I should say. I think there is a tab though on EasyDNS. Anyway, do all that stuff. Read the whole newsletter. Tons more there that we didn't cover tonight, just as there is every week. And that's all for now. Until next week, take care of yourselves.
Take care.